What's the main problem with this planet? Someone asked me. The biggest problem. Too many people, I said. Well, sure, he said, but on top of that, pollution. No, it's the fact that we're not in the food chain. No one eats us, not on a regular basis. We have no predators. Why is that a problem, I said. Too many people, he said. We'd be better off if there was something around to cull the herd. He's right, and I think that the producers of TV shows, mainly on cable, have taken notice of this. And they're creating shows which, if not directly advocating cannibalism, are at least in favor of thinning out the population, often in direct and extremely violent terms. Whenever a show about aliens pops up, it's clear that they're coming to this planet not just to conquer us, but to eat us. They're coming here for nutrition. There's a plentiful food source that is basically defenseless. So while the alien invasion is a threat to humanity, it's also an instant solution to the problem of overpopulation. And when this happens, we are never frightened. It's more that we're offended by it. How dare they think of us as food? We'll show them. Going back to pre-TV, The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. The creatures living in the future under the ground are the ones who lived on the surface. But there was no reciprocity, no ongoing war. Nobody ate the ones living underground. The surface beings were like cattle. Sweeney Todd, a vengeful man, he killed people on a regular basis, and the woman who lived below him made meat pies out of them. And Stephen Sondheim made a musical out of this, and a lot of people paid to see the musical about a guy who kills a town full of people and a woman who makes meat pies out of them. So clearly the attraction is there. People claim to be repelled by just the thought of people eating people, but when they hear about this musical about murders and meat pies, it's like, hey, let's go. Sounds cool. Back to TV, there are plenty of shows about vampires and zombies. Vampires don't exactly eat people, but they do live off them. Zombies are out to eat people. They're like stoners with the munchies. We are definitely in their sights as a food chain item. And these shows have good ratings. All the mob shows, gangsters, mobsters, drug lords, bikers, none of those eat people, but they are free, as we are not, to employ murder when it seems necessary to protect anyone near and dear or in the immediate family. These occasions occur nearly on a daily basis, and of course, like life being the vicious, brutal, anything goes affair that it is, plenty of killing will go on within the family too. Hey, this is beginning to sound like one of Shakespeare's plays. Then there are the shows set in either in a possible future or a fantasy past, in which killing is simply a way of life. You wake up, have breakfast, slaughter as many people as time permits, fuck somebody if there's a break in the action, resume the mayhem, bathe if you get the chance, and go to bed to get some sleep, hoping to recharge the batteries, because tomorrow is another day, and that much killing takes a lot out of you. Physically, of course, but also mentally and emotionally. Constant homicide is draining. If these butchers were making meat pies, they'd have over 50 billion served. Then, when I think about the real world, if I take a look at the news, I can see that we are doing a pretty good job of killing each other. It's not enough, it could be better organized, it's really hit and miss, and when somebody comes along and seems to have a real knack for the efficient disposition of large numbers of people, everyone starts yelling genocide, we get alarmed and put a stop to it. There's a glaring omission here. We are wasting our dead, which seems deeply ironic when so many people are pounding the drum of sustainability. I think if we really want to talk about sustainability, we should stop with the cremation and the burials and start making meat pies. We have living wills, we donate our organs, we offer our bodies for science. It's time for us to give up our meat. It's time for Soylent Green. Meanwhile, predation on our species probably isn't going to come from outer space. And there are just way too many people for killers and maniacs and terrorists to have any substantial effect. Fantasy and horror are just illusions, and even less likely than the aliens. I think it's going to take a germ, a virus, some pestilence, to get into us and spread before it can be contained or treated. Then we'll rejoin the food chain, undone by a pesky one-celled villain, fertilizing the planet with our remains, as the plague rips through the tightly packed human population like fire and tinder driven by high winds. That should trim our numbers by a few billion at least. The survivors won't think of themselves as being especially fortunate, and they sure as hell won't consider themselves as being somehow specially placed outside the cycle of life and death. In fact, they'll be thinking exactly the opposite, how particularly vulnerable they are.